Today we're going to be working with 5.1 and 5.2, and this has to do with multiplication. So first thing I recommend is having your multiplication helper sheet with you so that you can work through these problems. So we did this in class yesterday, and now what we're going to do is we're just take a second to review what we worked on before we get started on our homework today. So the first problem we have here is we have 42 times 20. So one of the ways we talked about this yesterday was that we can break this number apart a little bit. So 42 times 20 is kind of an intimidating number. We've worked a lot with our single digit in chapter 4 where we do like 42 times 10 and work with those numbers. Now we're going to just expand it and work with some 2-digit by 2-digit multiplication. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see one of my numbers is going to be easy to work with and one of them not so much. Okay? The easy to work with one is going to be my 20 here. All right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to take that 20 and I'm going to break it apart. Okay, multiplication shows me I can break this apart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn 20 into 2 times 10. All right? So now I change my problem. So now I'm going to be working with 42 times 2 times 10. All right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do part of this first. I'm going to take my 42 times 2 first. So again, I just broke up this 20 to make it a little more easy to work with. But I'm going to take my 42 and I'm going to multiply it by 2. Okay? This is one that I've practiced a lot with. I've worked with these. We did this all in chapter 4. First step, draw my line so I know I've done it. 2 times 2 I know is 4. And 2 times 4, which is actually 2 times 40, is going to be 80 or 80. So now I have 84. So this is going to replace this first part. All right? So now I'm left with 2 times 42, which is my first chunk here, was 84. And now I still have this 10 left, so now I can multiply by 10. 10, we know our multiplication. I'm going to be able to solve that pretty easily. So what I can do is I can do my 10 multiplication, and I remember that I just add that 0. So my answer would be 840. All right, this is our first way to solve it. Let's take a look at another way we can solve these problems. The next problem here we set up, we worked through our first way where we can kind of split those numbers apart, and that was really focused on that associative property that we learned about back in our earlier chapters. But now we're going to set it up in more of a standard form. All right, so we're going to set this up and work it through like we would our normal standard multiplication problems. This time, just remember there's going to be these 2 steps. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start this and I'm going to take my multiplication and I have 3 times 0. 0 is my favorite number because 3 times 0 is going to be 0 every time. All right, then I take my 0 times 40. 0 times 40 is still 0. All right, so I just end up with those 2 zeros. It doesn't really help me out. It doesn't really hurt me, but now I've finished off this. Okay, now I'm going to come back, and now I remember that I get to start with a 0 down here. I start by holding that 0 down there. And this just tells me that I am now dealing with 30. Instead of dealing with 3, I'm working with 30. So that's what's going to hold that place value. And now I work through and do my normal multiplication again. So I take 3 or 30 times 3, I know is 9. And then I take 3 times 4. Now you'll see I've touched all of these numbers. This 0 touched both. This 3 is touching both, so I know I've done all of my math. So now I take 3 times 4, and I know 3 times 4 is 12. Okay? And then I would go in and add it up because I'm just adding zeros. This is going to end up being my answer, but I'll work through the steps. 1,290. All right, so this is how I'd work through it in that more standard form. Let's do another one of these just so we can see our more standard form, because I get the feeling this is how most of us enjoy doing it. If you enjoy doing it the first way, that is fantastic. But let's look at our standard form just one more time. So this time we're going to do 27 times 20. And we're going to start out the same way. 0 times 0, or 0 times 7, 0. 0 times 2, 0. I could write that down, but I'm actually going to work on even saving a step further. So I'm not going to write that down because I kind of know that I don't really need to because it's just going to end up being zeros. But now what I am going to do is I'm going to add this 0 in here. And again, this 0 just tells me that I am actually working with 20. So it tells me I have 0 ones because I'm dealing all with my 10s. So now I'm going to take my 10s and I multiply my 2 by my 7. Okay, when I multiply 2 by 7, I know I get 14. I can't put my whole 14 down here. So I put my 4 here and my 1 up top, just like I did in chapter 4. And now I'm going to finish it off by multiplying my 2 times 2, which I know is 4. I need to add my 1, so I get 5. and I would end up with 540. All right. We worked through this yesterday. This should be a refresher for you. Make sure that you take the time to rewatch this video if you need more help. Otherwise, use the homework helper and make sure that you use your multiplication helper sheet. That's going to definitely help you with this.